So this is the second video on Module 5. You've planned your wedding. You've gone through those things and you've posted. For some of you, you've completed all of that post in the first week of the module and your first discussion board. And we're moving forward to talk about marriage, what it actually is and what's going on with it. Marriage is the legal and socially recognized relationship that includes sexual, economic, social rights, and responsibilities for partners. It actually puts us in that position, and depending on where we're married, it makes a significant difference of what our rights and responsibilities are. You'll notice on your in your module, I'm asking you to look at how old you can be and who gets married where and what the rules are within it. But marriage has changed a great deal, and it's changing very quickly as we start to explore some of those issues. So, significant differences going on here, and we can look at the mutual benefits of putting things together, of looking at the main purpose for marriage and who marries within that process, so that we see that marriage confers many benefits on couples that civil unions do not. So this was part of the big push to legalize marriage for gay and lesbian couples, because there are significant things that civil unions cannot provide. And there are significant differences between married and those cohabitating, those unmarried couples, as far as legal obligations, health care, rights, and citizens issues. So same-sex marriage is a big part of talking in this chapter. You have looked at some significant battles that have gone back and forth. The Defense of Marriage Act occurred under the Clinton administration. And we look at the Supreme Court ruling that states must recognize all marriages. Now, the states have fought back, and certain communities within the states have fought back, and this is an argument that might be well served in a political science class of the states' rights versus federal rights. But in 2015, the Supreme Court ruled that the state-level ban on same-sex marriages were unconstitutional. Now, many of them took this to battle. Pennsylvania did not. New York already had legalized same-sex marriages, so that we've moved forward in our own area. In fact, I attended the first same-sex marriage to occur in Tioga County, a wonderful celebration of people who were partnered for a long period of time and had long been involved in a committed relationship. So we've seen some real changes within that, and that is how quickly the society has changed to look at it. So look at the support here, the dramatic difference that comes into play as you start seeing the differences over the year. And as we look at this, you can see that there has been a positive change within that status. Should it be legal? Should it not be legal? And that's why the move forward was easy enough for the Supreme Court to find on that. The support for same-sex marriage has changed dramatically, and even with older adults coming up to almost 50% of support, but especially younger adults, as we look at that 18 to 29-year-old with more than 76% support for this. So what about marriage? We know that there are reasons that people want to marry. There are these benefits that we talked about back here, that marriage confers upon people, married couples. Have rules, there are medical decisions, there are issues as far as who can have children or take care of those children and who has those responsibilities coming into place. So the marriage market. The marriage markets are the structural patterns of romantic choice. So we go back to our last video where we talked about falling in love, the type of love relationship, how we produce these relationships, and they're characterized by homogamy. Homogamy, sorry about that. But we partner with people similar to us, that have the same values, the same ethnic backgrounds. They grow up in the same category. They're the same social status. We see that matchingness come in to the most likely people we are to marry. And so, like a job market, marriage markets go into that possibility of finding people in the same way. We're more likely to find them in a college classroom. And those people who go to the same university we go to are more likely to be us. Now, what about you who are purely online students? How do you meet people? You meet them within the job environment, you meet them other places, and we see this online dating as a process that reproduces the same likeness upon who can afford those online dating sites. What are you looking for? What's most beneficial, and how do you want to look at that market? Today, more than 25% of couples that marry meet online in online forums, whether it be meeting on Facebook or a formal dating site that comes into place like Match.com or any of the others. There's so many, Farmers Only, as we start to explore that. This is a change in pattern, but remember, people were always put together in one form or another, whether it be blind dates or a marriage broker who would bring commonalities together. We could be looking at the story of Fiddler on the Roof, who has a marriage broker finding someone similar with those same backgrounds. Pretty structural issues as we look at this pattern. So, the differences here: marriage, cohabitation, education becomes part of that homogeneous matter, that we have education in common. In fact, marriages stay together the more alike that we are. And we find that those that someone who may have a PhD and the other person has a high school degree are more likely for divorce and separation. That like cultures, like backgrounds, these all influence our relationships and our patterns. And we see that people with college degrees are more likely to get married, stay married, and have children within marriage. And we see this changing perspective and the widening gap over time between different social statuses. So again, we go back to that, looking at cohabitation, and we can see how many people are more likely to cohabitate at that lower socioeconomic class, or at times in our lives where our financial status will be different. So the percentage married by educational attainment and less high school continues to drop, all the way from 71% in 1960 all the way to 44% today, or in 2008. That isn't even today. It's dropped even more from the statistics that our author gives us. And the percentage of women age 18 to 44 who have ever cohabitated has definitely grown within that process. So we see this continued change. Now, cohabitation, marriage, varies by race and ethnicity, that there's significant differences that come into place, and the rates are different based on race. They're different also on social class, education, and immigration. So we see those examples. So Asian Americans have the highest marriage rate. They also have the highest level of college. They also have the highest incomes proportionately. And so the high proportion of first and second generations. And we see that as we study those marriages, which we don't have enough time to do in this class per se, we will find that they're more likely to marry those that are like themselves. African Americans have low marriage rates. They have lower levels of education, lower levels of income and wealth. But remember that 50% of African Americans in the United States are middle class, but those of lower economic wealth have lower levels of marriage, especially, and the marriage squeeze in poor communities exist, and so we have significant issues. In fact, when we look at divorce, the higher rate of divorce for African Americans is explained by the lack of employment of male partners in the process. So these are some of the examples that come into place as we start looking at marriage rates. Now, do they fit everyone? No, and not everyone fits into every category. This is the whole beauty of sociology, is that we've got to look at the social influences that come into place and what makes a difference. We're going to see that 1/3 of African American females will not marry in their life. And the increase of singleness in our society today is much higher than it's ever been since we've gained those statistics. We've had an increase also of racial intermarriage. And again, thinking about sociology, you've got to remember that race is a social construct that comes into place as we put it into place, and we have the highest among Asian and Latinos. That difference, we have the increasing of social distance lessons, that we become more alike, and there's a strong public approval. It's high but not universal related to racial intermarriage. It is not that long ago, only 50 years, that it was illegal in many states to marry outside your race. And that's pretty significant change over time. We talk about the change of gay and lesbian marriage. That has come along significantly in your lifetime, as has the intermarriage of racial backgrounds, especially in your parents' generation, changed a great deal. Now, marriage provides us with a lot of things. It provides a premium. People who are married report that they are happier, they have better health, and they have stronger economic security. So we call this the marriage premium. The concept that married people are happier, that they're better off, makes a lot of sense when you think about it. You have a partner to talk to, you have this in a relationship, and yet we know that marriages that fall apart are more likely to fall apart in the first 10 years. We're better off with two salaries or that support in place for one another. You know, women take care of the health in the family, so people are healthier in that process. Men who are not married tend to live more dangerous lives. They go on to the bar, they pick fights, they stop that stuff. The marriage has a premium. There are people who may be happier and healthier and have more money, but it depends on other issues as well, doesn't it? There is psychological well-being of happiness that occurs with marriage. Reported interactions that, especially for men, they have this person to turn to. There is improved health, and there's that improved economic security. So the wage premium, married men earn more than unmarried men. Statistically, we know men earn more than women, so you put the two salaries together, and we have this whole picture of social capital that adds to that marriage picture. So as you start exploring this module and the rest of it, I want you to look at the history of marriage, the marriage laws, and what it was like for a woman in the 1950s. So I give you this particular piece to look at here, and let me jump into it. I had it in the wrong mode to go out to. But just some information about how much marriage has changed over the years, and think about how much it has changed the same. This was the guide for a good housewife, the guide for how wives were to treat their husbands. Now, if you've looked at the history from the very beginning in the first video on this module, you know that it wasn't always that way for the woman to be in romantic love and take care of them. And this was published within it. So I'll give you some time to look at it. But the recommendations are: have dinner ready when he comes home. Most men are hungry. The prospect of the good meal to be there. Prepare yourself. Look beautiful for him. Doesn't she look good and submissive? Be a little gay, a little more interesting for him, because his day may have been boring and it's your job to lift him up. How we've changed as we explore what women's jobs are within the home today. You know, even in the 1950s, the majority there, it was that one period of time that women were able to stay home and be wives. Financially, in the 1980s, one person could earn enough money to buy the same amount of goods it now takes two people. So there's economic pieces that change marriage and cohabitation as well. It really changes our story. So as you explore this, you'll enter your discussion for the second part of Module 5 will be the typical. Pull an article up related to cohabitation or marriage in America and tie that into the coursework. Thank you and have a good day.